Okay guys, so the first pattern that we are going to talk about is the high order component, and it is a very common pattern, React pattern, that is used widely today by third-party packages. So a high order component is a function that takes component and returns a new component. So this is a general definition, and we cannot understand deeply how we can use high order component. So the best way to understand what is high order component is to look at examples. So I brought here examples from common examples that everyone who uses router and Redux encountered with this styling. So if we look at the first example, we can see that first of all, the with router is a high order component of the React router. So the with router is a high order component. So it's a function that takes component 1 and it returns a new component. So basically what with router does, it injects props into this component. So the new component will have access to some specific props. At the second example, we can see that this is the connect function of the Redux, of the React Redux. So this connect function takes a component and returns a new component. So our new component will have access to the Redux state, because the connect function, the logic inside, will inject into our component some specific props. So we can see that this pattern is used by React Redux and React Router, and it is widely used by a lot of React third-party packages. So let's look at an example of what is specific usage of the high order component and what is the advantage by using a high order component. So let's look at this example. So here we have two components. We have the shoes components and we have the shirts component. So basically each component, what it does, it displays a list of items. So the shoes component displays a list of shoes with a shoe name, and it does basic translation. And the shirts component will display a list of shirts. So if we look a few seconds at these two components, we can see that they does the same exact thing. So the shoes component, when the component mounts, it will fetch some data and it will set the data inside the state, and then we will render our new shoes. And the shirts component, it does the same. It fetches the shirts and then it sets the new shirts in the state, and it will render them over here in our return. So this duplicate logic can be abstracted and can be used in a high order component. So we can wrap the shoes with a higher order component that will inject to the shoes items, the data. And we can do the same for the shirts. So let's go and see what I did here. So I abstracted the previous logic by, first of all, I created my higher order component. So if you look at these lines have a list container. And basically this component is defined as a container because it is not a view layer, it's only a logic layer that will pass to its children, to its child, some data. So the list container is a component that accepts three props: a type, translate, and a component. So as we said at the beginning of this video, the higher order component is a function that takes a component. So in this case, this high order component takes type, translate, and a component. So this is our component. And the second thing the high order component does is it will return a new component. So when this high order component load or mount, we execute some logic. So here we fetch some data and we save the data inside the state. And then we will render the component that is passed to our high order component, and to this component we just pass a props. So if you want to use the shoes and the shirts, we simply go to our, let's say, homepage, and in our homepage we just define a list container. So we pass to the list container the type. So we are telling the container we want the shoes, and we want to pass it the translate function. So it's not important what the translate function does, it's just a function that the homepage takes. So the third props that we pass to this list container is the shoes component. So the list container will take the shoes component and it will fetch the shoes data, and then this list container will return the shoes component with the right props. So we can see that it's the same for the shirts. So we passed the shirts type and we passed the shirts component. So we are telling this higher order component, hey, take the shirts component and fetch the data and then pass to this shirts component the shirts items. So we can add this to hats or any list of items that we want to render and fetch. So this is a very basic example of high order component usage, that basically these high order components will accept a component as an argument, and then it will inject or mutate the component in the argument and will return a new component with additional or extended props. This higher order component also can not just pass data or props to the past components. It can also, let's say, if you want to wrap every component with some div for, let's say, for specific styling or specific layout, so it is also a very common usage of a higher order component. So remember that a higher order component is a function or a component that takes a component and returns a new component.